Welcome to the Marketing Mastermind, a podcast designed to elevate your entrepreneurial mindset and help you take your business to the next level through digital marketing. Join your host, agency owner Hillary Russell, as she interviews experts from around the world, dives into business success secrets, and gives tactical mindset training to help you elevate all areas of your life and business. Ready? Let's dive into another Marketing Mastermind episode.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Mastermind. And guys, as always, I like to start off with a little bit of a teaser before we invite the guest in. But honestly, for today's topic, it's really something that no matter what business you're running, no matter what stage you're at in your business or in your entrepreneurial journey, even, this is something that's going to affect you quite a bit. So be sure to grab your notebook, grab your pen, get ready to take some notes because this is going to be a really fun conversation. The guest that I have joining me here today is Ruthie Sterret. Ruthie, thank you so much for joining me and welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. We were just talking about how we're going to nerd out on some marketing strategy here, and I'm excited to have that conversation.
Yeah, it will be good. Yes, I love nerding out on marketing strategy. That's one of my favorite pastimes. So, so tell our listeners a little bit, give us a peek into who Ruthie is so that they have an idea of who we're talking to here today.
Yeah, so I am a content strategist and self-taught marketer. I have a long history and background in the retail space, and actually went to college for selling and sales management. So I have a lot of background in sales, and within retail, I focused on merchandising and management. And then after about a 15-year career in retail marketing or retail management and merchandising, I pivoted into marketing. And I'm very grateful for a leader that gave me an opportunity and basically said, like, I know that you get it. I know that you understand retail. And I know that you don't know everything about marketing, but I believe that you'll figure it out. And that's what I did. And so I was a self-taught marketer, read all the blogs, all the books, listened to the podcasts, consumed as much content as I possibly could, trying to understand marketing, and then just piece by piece implemented what I was learning with that company. And I actually helped that company 10x their e-commerce revenue during the pandemic. And obviously there were other things that were happening with the pandemic that led to an increase in e-commerce growth. But some of the work that I had done early on around consistency in branding and clarifying ideal customer and really honing in on messaging, I think set us up for success. And in my retail life, I worked for a smaller company and grew actually my role in marketing from the marketing department, where it was just me. I was the marketing department, to the marketing director, and actually had a team of 8. But I understand what it means to have to do things scrappy. I understand what it means to not have big budgets. And so today I'm really passionate about teaching small business owners, solopreneurs, or leaders of really small teams how to implement a marketing strategy without overwhelm and to create a content strategy that creates trust with their audience.
Yeah, that's cool. I love hearing your story too. It's very unique, but also it's funny because our stories, our backgrounds and experience, we have a lot of similarities, which is kind of fun. But yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like too that you kind of had a situation of learning marketing really by like baptism by fire type thing.
Yeah. And as I was learning the marketing space for, B2C within the retail industry, I was also, just like many women, having a side hustle in network marketing. And so I was consuming a lot of content around personal branding and around, even service-based businesses, but learning even how you can take some of the tools and tricks of the trade that are working in one industry and almost kind of like tweak it for your own industry and niche. And that's one thing that I love to do, is to look out across different verticals and say, well, what's working for them? And how could we take that and make it work for this vertical over here? What can we learn from those different businesses? Because I think so often what I see business owners do is they look to like the leader in their industry and they try to say like, well, what are these people doing? Well, you can't necessarily steal a page from their chapter 50 when you're in chapter 5. And
Right.
so it's, getting strategies that work for where you are based upon your brand equity, based upon your relationship with your customers. And so I love kind of just looking across the entire marketing landscape to learn best practices and then figure out a way to simplify it and scale it, even if you don't have a huge budget or a huge team.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. Well, I mean, let's just get down into like the nitty gritty of it, right? When it comes to social media, first, will you define for us what, just for those out there and just for the peace of mind for you and I, will you define the difference between a social media manager and content strategy, right? Because there's a big
Yeah.
difference between the two.
Yeah, there is a big difference. And, I think back again to my retail background, and I remember the company that I was working for. We were talking with some merchandisers and buyers. They were kind of sharing social media posts from other retailers, bigger retailers. And
Mhm.
they were like, "Well, why can't you do a post like this? Or why don't we do a post like this?" And I was like, "Do y'all understand that that company has like an entire department of people that not only create social media content, but also, have social media. They have a social media team where like you
Right.
have me who is also doing 50 other things, and the bandwidth is not the same. And so again, it's not about just like, oh, let me just slap up and throw up a post. It's so much more than that. And so when I think about social media management, it is very much a piece of the puzzle. Social media is a tool in your marketing toolkit, and it's a container that can take your messaging and distribute it to your audience. And there are so many different platforms and there are so many different trends and changes that having somebody who is an expert in those fields on your team is incredibly helpful. But the problem is that I see people wanting that like microwave results, quick fix. I want to go viral. I need a social media manager, and that's going to save my business.
Mhm.
And it's it's not, unfortunately. Again, it's a piece of the puzzle. And so I've seen people even go out and hire a social media manager, but they haven't taken the time to clearly define their brand details. They haven't taken the time to figure out what their business goals are. Maybe they don't know what their volume drivers or their launch plan is or all these other things, and they want a social media manager to figure that out for them. And that's not
Right.
necessarily the job of a social media manager. That's the job of a marketing strategist. And I know that's what you focus on, and so too that that's just a piece of the puzzle. And having somebody really specialized in that absolutely helps you maybe do the best you possibly can with that particular tool, but it's not the only tool you need.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. Well, and I love too that you said, you brought up there's so many individuals or so many business owners who think, okay, I'll just hire a social media manager and they'll just take care of this, right? But they haven't really thought about what is the goal? Like, what is the purpose of the content that we're creating? So maybe walk us through, let's start at point A, right?
Yeah.
Before you're even putting together or like you said, it's not just about like jumping on social media and putting out some random post, right? There's some
Yeah.
strategy behind it. So
Yeah.
when we're starting at like ground zero, what are the first initial things that a business owner should be thinking about to create an effective strategy?
Yeah. So I always think of it as a roadmap, and there's a start and a finish. And the start is your brand. So have we clearly defined where we are starting from? What is our brand? Who's our ideal customer? What are our brand mission, vision, values? What are our keywords? Do we know our brand colors? Do we have our brand fonts defined? Those really, really details that make your brand who it is. That's where we're starting from. And
Mhm.
then our goal, our finish line, where we're trying to get is whatever the business goal is. So maybe it's X amount of dollars in sales. Maybe it's an increase in your email list. Maybe it's a increase in your click-through rate on emails. You're going to have different business goals that we really have to step back and break down. And it's so funny. I had a conversation with a business owner once, and we were talking about coming up with a promotion for Black Friday, and we were kind of looking at the numbers and looking at sales and this and that and trying to come up with a promotion. And we started talking about average unit retail. We started talking about average transaction value, conversion rate, all these things. and I was with some other business leaders that had more insight into the company's cash flow and profitability than I did at the time. And so I said, well, what's the business goal? Like, what's our goal here? And they just looked at me like, all of them. And I was like, whoa, no. We have to work backwards. Like, I get it that sales, let's say $1 million, just make up a number, $1 million in sales is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to have $1 million in sales, how many transactions do we need at our current average transaction value? And do we want to focus on trying to raise the number of transactions or the average transaction value? And so working backwards through that sales equation, it's super important to understand which one we are trying to influence with our marketing strategy, because you can't influence all of them all at once. It's like, I'm like the analogy queen. And I'll say, like, it's like if you're building a house and you say, well, what's the goal? Today is we're going to build the bathroom. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to go get a refrigerator to build the bathroom because it doesn't go in it. So we need to know exactly what goal we're chasing after. And so then the strategy and the content is the bridge that connects our brand to our business goal. So we build out a strategy with a content plan of what containers are we going to use? So what roads are we going to take? And then what messaging are we going to put on those roads, which is, whether it's a promotion or it's an engagement type message or it's a loyalty type message, because each message is trying to achieve different things, which gets us to our overall goal.
Yeah. I love that. I think the most natural next question in my mind and for our listeners as well is, okay, this sounds great and it's starting to make sense, Ruthie. And, we need a purpose behind the strategy that, or the content that we're posting. But how do you get even more finite with that? Right. And how do you know when something's working and when it's not working?
Well, that's a great question. But I think before we can even gauge whether it's working or not working, we have to take a hard look at ourselves and our business and say, what can we do and commit to that we can do consistently? And I'm going to share another analogy that I shared with a client who is a therapist. If you're a therapist, you teach your clients a lot of different tools to work through whatever issues they're working through. There's different types of therapy. There's talk therapy, there's tapping, I don't even know because I'm not a therapist. Like, I'm just like saying words right now, but there's also medication, there's hypnosis, like there's all these different tools, right? And different tools are going to work for different people. But anything that you just do once is probably not going to work. So we have to think about what can we commit to with consistency so that we can figure out if it works or not. So like, okay, therapy, go back to the therapy example. If somebody is going to try tapping, I don't know what the ERT, I don't know what the numbers are, but tapping, you know what I mean? And they do it and they're like, this, don't like it. It feels uncomfortable. I'm not going to do it. Well, then that's not the tool for them, but that's not the only tool in the toolbox. And from a marketing perspective, TikTok, people are incredibly successful being on TikTok. But you might get on TikTok and be like, this is terrible. I don't like the music. I don't like dancing. I don't know how to edit videos. I don't have the patience or the bandwidth or the desire to figure this out. Well, then that's not the tool for you.
Right.
So it's figuring out the tool that you are most comfortable with and then that you can actually be consistent with. So when I sit down and I talk to my clients about a social media strategy, I always say, like, let's start with one platform. And let's get really consistent on that platform for at least 90 days. Yeah. And then after those 90 days, we can reevaluate and say, are we ready to layer in a second platform? And then we can start to say, all right, on that second platform, are we repurposing the exact same content or do we need to tweak it? Are there trends on this other platform that we want to try to jump on? But we're not going to try to have shiny object syndrome and get on all the platforms all at once. We need to get really good at one before we layer in more. And the same thing with a holistic marketing strategy. You might already be on social media and maybe you're getting some good traction from social media, but you want to up level and you think, okay, I'm going to spend money on ads. Well, ads are one way to increase your awareness and your traffic. Or you might say, you know what, I'm going to go on a podcast tour. and I'm going to start pitching myself to be out on different podcasts. But if you try to do both at the same time, you might struggle to figure out which one is really helping, or you might really struggle to like commit completely to one. So then neither one really works. So I
Yeah.
like to advise people to pick one new activation per quarter and not try to do multiple new things at once.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I also really love that you said that you should really start with one platform, like choose one platform or one social media tool that you want to focus on where you're attracting clients, and put your efforts there for at least 90 days before you try to do everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. The second part of that too, and you kind of put a 90-day or 3-month right time frame on it as well, is focusing on one call to action or one driver, right? One thing that you're trying to get those individuals to take action on per quarter. What are your thoughts with promotions, and when it comes to that? Does that mean
Yeah.
that you're focusing on one call to action or doing different versions of that one call to action for the quarter?
That's a great question. And I actually wouldn't say that I think you need to focus on one driver or one call to action per quarter. What I think I mean more is with each post or each content piece to know what you're trying to achieve with that content piece.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might be having a content piece that you're specifically trying to drive engagement, that, you notice your engagement's been a little bit low. You notice that your reach is starting to dip, maybe because your engagement's been low. So it's like, okay, we're going to try to create some really shareable content, or we're going to try to create, something that people want to interact with, like a poll or asking a question to get people to engage. But that doesn't mean that that's what every single piece of content is going to be about for an entire month or week or quarter. But that's something that we're going to sprinkle in and know that that piece of content is trying to achieve that. When we think about the marketing funnel, attract, nurture, and convert, I think within your social media content, there should be content pieces that try to do each of those three things, but not at the same time. And even as a business owner, when you're sitting down and objectively looking at your content, asking yourself, okay, well, maybe the intention of this post was to nurture my audience, which, to be honest, I think most of your social media content should be nurture type content. But if you do, it's like, okay, if this was nurturing my audience, am I providing value? Am I connecting with them? If it's an attract type piece of content, maybe reels or something that gets more of a reach, how was the reach? What did it look like? So we're looking at different numbers and different metrics depending upon what the goal is, and knowing that we want to have a mix of all of those things so that we're meeting our audience in different phases of the funnel depending upon where they are.
Right. Okay. I like that. I actually wrote those down: attract, nurture, and convert.
Yeah. And I'll talk with clients about social media content in general, and they'll say, well, that didn't get very many likes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, stop talking about likes. And I'll even share with you, I had a client who they're in real estate, and they had an open house, and we did a post specifically about the open house. And they said, you know what? We had 8 people come to that open house that we didn't expect to have that kind of traffic, but that post didn't get any likes. So just because people aren't tapping that little button doesn't mean that they aren't seeing it. Right. And so there's different metrics that we are going to measure. I'll even ask people sometimes about like, well, let's not look at the likes and let's not look at the follows and even the comments, but let's look at your web traffic. Has your web traffic increased? Okay, then we're doing something that's working. Or has your conversion rate increased? Okay, well, we're priming people to buy with the content that we're sharing. So we're constantly trying to adjust different ingredients to kind of get to that ultimate goal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. Specifically with that, and from a marketing strategy standpoint, I really love that you said, let's look at the other metrics outside of just the common ones that you think of when it comes to social media, like the likes or the impressions or things of that nature, right? Because it affects the entire ecosystem of your client's journey, right? From the prospecting side of that all the way into even, returning clients.
Yeah. And quite honestly, the content that you're putting out there today is setting you up for the results that you're going to get in the next 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So even to look at something and say, well, this month we didn't get this or we didn't get that. Okay, well, what were you doing 3 months ago? Because that's what's setting you up for your sales today, because it takes so much longer with the amount of content that people are exposed to and they consume. It takes more time and more touch points for people to make that buying decision.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's spot on. I love the 90-day rule. I talk about that a lot with my clients and even the entrepreneurs or students that I get to work with, that's a direct indicator, right? The results that you're achieving right now, whether it's website visitors, conversions, sales, right? Even things happening in your personal life, it's a direct indication of what you were doing or the input that you were putting in 90 days previous.
Yeah, I always tell people that marketing is like salad. It's like, I didn't gain 10 pounds because I ate pizza yesterday. I gained 10 pounds because I ate pizza every week for the last 3 months. And if I had ate salad instead, maybe I would have lost 10 pounds, but it doesn't happen instantly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, it is. It's all about consistency. It really is. So, okay. So Ruthie, break it down for us a little bit then, in terms of putting together a content strategy.
Yeah.
Right? Say that we've got a new business, want to put together a strategy and start posting on social media. What does that strategy look like? Where do we start with it? And how do you choose a platform and the right types of content for that?
Yeah. So the first thing that I actually recommend is to think about content outside of social media. And what that is going to be more of a long form piece of content. And I know business owners sometimes get really overwhelmed. They're like, what do you mean long form content? Like, you want me to write a blog? And I'll even have people say, well, nobody reads blogs. Well, sometimes the intention of the blog is not to like blow your business up overnight, but a blog is going to provide SEO value for your website and give you long-term traffic. But then it also gives you a long form piece of content that you can pull from so that you can repurpose into shorter form pieces of content like social media. So you might be saying, okay, well, I'm not a writer. I don't want to write a blog. Okay, there's other ways that we can think about long form content. So a blog, a podcast, or a video are kind of the top three that I want people to consider. But if you're not there yet, then I would say an email to your email list. If you don't have an email list, that's where we can maybe go back to social media and we can say, let's do one meaty, value-packed social media post as your long form piece of content. But save that, because that could become a blog when you're ready to implement that into your overall marketing strategy. But starting with that long form content, and if you're not even sure what container it's going to be yet, the very first step, quite honestly, is just to brainstorm topics. So you want to brainstorm and think about what are several topics that I could sit down and talk about or write about, like, without a ton of research, without a ton of prep. Like, I'm the expert. This is what I can talk about. This is what I get really jazzed up about. And you're going to make yourself a list. And then from that brainstorm, if you haven't already defined content themes and pillars for your business, that brainstorm alone is going to start to reveal what your content pillars and themes are. Now, the alternate way to do that is to pick your pillars first, which is you pick 3 to 5 pillars of things that you're kind of known for or what your brand content is rooted in, and then brainstorm subtopics under those pillars. But that's really the first step to a content strategy. And then after we define that, then we can get the calendar out and start plugging things in for what we want to talk about when.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great example. And I love that you shared the exercise too of, the content pillars, right? Let's maybe go back to that for a little bit, because that is something that I know for myself, I kind of got hung up on for a little bit there. And then I was like, oh, wait, actually the content pillars are really just ingrained in everything that we're doing anyways. So right?
Yeah. And the content pillars can evolve. Your business is going to evolve along with your offers, along with your ideal customer. You might start out with one offer and then 6 months later, and especially for new business owners, like, I want you to give yourself grace that you can evolve. things can change. You don't have to get it right the first time, but if you do nothing, you're never going to get it right. Like, I always coach my clients and, anybody that I talk to and mentor that focus on progress over perfection, but focus on the process over the progress. If you're not even taking the process of creating content, you're never going to make any progress. And even if you feel like your content is bad content is better than no content, because you'll learn through the process by creating that bad or that just okay content.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And such a great message, great piece of advice for so many different areas of entrepreneurship and our lives in general. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like, hands down, having something out there, doing something, even if it's not the best, having something out there will beat nothing every time.
Absolutely, because you'll learn from it. And if it's not good and it flops, well, okay, what can you learn from that? How can you tweak it and evolve next time? Or it might even teach you that, like, this isn't the offer that I want to offer, or this isn't the ideal client that I want to reach out to, and you learn from it. So there's absolutely tons of value in just doing the work and sticking to the process and trying things.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when it comes to the platform itself, and you start posting and you start trying to build an account, or build an audience or attract an audience, what advice would you give to someone that is starting with maybe 100 followers, right? Like a smaller account, and they're really just trying to build it up, to build a loyal audience base, right? What advice would you give for maybe connecting or building that account through the followers?
Well, number one is be consistent, because I've seen so many business owners commit to working on social media, and then they'll post and the post doesn't get the type of engagement or reaction that they hoped it would, and then they don't post again for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they'll go maybe a week and they'll post every day for a week, and then life will happen, business will happen, and they will just kind of fall off the face of the earth again for a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, we are working with the algorithm, and the algorithm doesn't like that. And it actually hurts you to have that start, stop kind of yo-yo cycle, where you're going to grow much more consistently. And when I say consistently, I mean also with real followers, which is the other reason that, like, the number of followers to me is not a huge metric to pay attention to, because you don't want, 10,000 followers and 8,000 of them are bots or fake. But real genuine connections and real genuine people following your content. And another big thing is outside of social media, whether it's referrals from existing clients, it's networking, it's people in your community, it's being on a podcast guest or speaking at events, whatever it is, ways that you can get yourself out there and learn and people find you. Then you use social media as almost like a secondary website or a secondary billboard where people can learn about you. And I've heard a lot of service providers say, like, oh, well, I don't find my clients on social media. And that's probably true. You probably don't. But that doesn't mean that people aren't evaluating you on social media and deciding if and when they're going to work with you based upon your social media presence. If I'm a hairdresser and one of my clients refers me and says, oh my gosh, Ruthie colors my hair, she does such a great job, I love her. But then, like, somebody's neighbor also refers their hairdresser. Well, chances are, like, I'm going to look them both up on Instagram, and I'm going to kind of decide, like, whose vibe do I like? Who do I think I would get along with? And that's going to help influence who I work with. So it's not necessarily that you're attracting new clients, but you might be nurturing the people that are already being directed your way throughout your content.
That's so good. Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to put it too, because I mean, yeah, that's spot on. That I know for myself and with the clients that I'm working with, right? We talk about making sure that your online presence as a whole is up to par, right?
And
sorry, go ahead.
The consistency piece of it, I'll see photographers are a great example of this. Photographers have literally banks of content. Like you have all of these amazing photos that you do all of this work. And I'll see photographers go weeks and weeks, if not months and months, without posting anything. Well, then me, mom over here, asking for referrals for my family photo. I got literally 45 suggestions in the mom's Facebook group. I start looking people up. I see that someone hasn't posted in 3 months. And I think, well, is she even in business anymore? And then I just like move on, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe you are so busy and booked out that you don't need new clients. Okay, well, good for you. But you never know when that could change. And so by being consistent, and I'm not saying every day, I certainly don't think that consistent has to mean constant, but at least that we're putting some content out there once a week, twice a week to make sure that we're showing the social media world, hey, our lights are on and we're open for business.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love that you've put it that way. And honestly too, like I would say that in the trends that we've seen with marketing and even the ways that consumers habits or, actions are taking place, social media is really being used more as a search engine, right? It's being used to, like you said, do I vibe with this person? Like, do I agree with their, the vibe that they're putting out here on their social media platform? And it's interesting too. And I know that, the pandemic played a big piece in this, but I think that it's the way that the trends were, kind of heading anyways. But that's that people don't really care about like the benefit feature type posts, right? For your business. They don't really care about the shiny object, right? What they care about is your values. What they care about is the human aspect and what they can associate with and connect with.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so tell us, Ruthie, how can individuals get in contact with you? Let's say, this whole conversation has been incredible. There have been so many golden nuggets that you've shared, and I've even wrote down a couple of notes here that have been awesome. But how can individuals or listeners get in touch with you if they have questions about social media content, strategy, and maybe give us a little bit of a plug for your agency there?
Yeah. So one thing is, if you are doing your own marketing, you're a small business owner, you don't have a marketing department, you don't have a marketing person, you're trying to run your business and do other things, or maybe somebody in your business does do marketing for you, but they wear other hats, because that happens all the time. I offer a monthly content co-working session, which is kind of like study hall or an accountability date for yourself to actually get your content done. And it's free. It's once a month. It's usually noon Eastern time on a weekday, but the day changes. So you can learn more about that at theconsistencycorner.com/community. We offer some content tips in the beginning, and then we literally have like 45 minutes to an hour of focused work time. It's amazing the amount of work that you can get done when there's somebody on the other side of a Zoom screen also working, which keeps you in your chair and keeps you focused. But then you also have an opportunity to ask questions and meet some other collaboration partners and other goal getters that could inspire you. So you can learn about that there. And then if you're interested in learning about what outsourcing your content strategy or your content management could look like, you can learn more at theconsistencycorner.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll have those links in the show notes as well. Awesome. Well, Ruthie, before we wrap up here, are there any last pieces of advice that you would give to the listeners, to business owners, entrepreneurs who are working on building their social media?
Yeah. I would just say, at the end of the day, if it is causing you stress, give yourself some grace and let it go. And when I say let it go, that might mean outsourcing it to somebody else. That might mean taking a break and coming back to it when you have a clearer head. These platforms, unfortunately, they are designed to keep us on them. And even as somebody in marketing who has managed, upwards of 20 plus profiles and has to spend a lot of time on the app, I know how draining it can be. And I know how addictive it can be. So, really be mindful of the time that you do spend on social media, and making sure that you are setting aside a time to create before you consume. And just remember that scrolling for inspiration is probably not getting you anywhere. It's just wasting your time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ruthie. That was incredible advice and something that I need to remind myself of too.
I
That's a good
know.
one.
I gave that advice because I have to take it for myself.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so very much for this really fun conversation. This was awesome.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Marketing Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, rate our show, and share with your friends on social media. You can also join our community by visiting us online at marketingmastermindpodcast.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode.